Welcome into This Week in Hockey East. I'm Bridgette Prue here with Eric Galanti. Big weekend ahead in Hockey East. Let's start with the Boston schools. Not only do we have the Beanpot to look forward to on Monday, but Friday night, Hockey East on NESN features number 13 Boston College at Boston University. So stay tuned for that right here, puck drop at 7 p.m. in front of a sold-out crowd at Agganis Arena.
Yeah, why don't we start with the Eagles? They got all 6 points last weekend against New Hampshire, a 5-2 win on Friday, 3-0 win on Saturday. Friday was another game defined by some of the Bruins picks, right? Dean Letourneau had 2 goals and an assist. James Higgins had a couple of points. James set up one of Dean's goals. Dean set up a nice goal later in the game. It's the 6th time this year that the Bruins' 2 first-round picks, Higgins and Letourneau, have scored in the same game. BC is 6-0 when that's happened. Letourneau now, we've talked about it all year, but you kind of shorten the sample size a little bit. His last 15 games, 11 goals, 7 assists. He continues to perform really well, and something that's going to be excited for Bruins fans to see in a rivalry game and then Beanpot on Monday. I thought UNH did a really nice job on Saturday limiting Boston College. And I think this is one of the things with this year's team that, believe it or not, as crazy as it sounds, is actually different than last year's team, is that with Hemming now in, with Gasso back, they are a little bit deeper in their forward group. Greg Brown's still mixing and matching his lines a little bit since coming for the second half. He said it's almost like restarting as we try to find the right combinations. But you see someone like Will Vogt, right, who's our service credit union scoring leader this week. Go back to that Lake State game. BC's down a couple of guys for World Juniors. He scores twice. They really needed him. And then that game was really a must-win NPI game. On Saturday, Vogt has 3 goals, a natural hat trick, only 3 goals of the game. He has 5 points for the weekend. He's now tied his career high with 8 goals, already has a career high 18 points. So that's, I think, just showing you some of the depth of this Eagles forward group, which is maybe different than last year, where as good as some of those top guys were last year, it did get a little bit one-liney by the end of the year. So that's nice to see. Gasso has been back and has been very good for them. So those are some positives on the BC side. And they'll take on a BU team that is, as crazy as it sounds, Bridgette, is trying to get their offense going right now.
Yeah, exactly. They've had some trouble. Last week they dropped their 2 games against Providence College. And just a side note quickly on PC, they have been on an absolute roll. We talk about how hard it is to sweep in Hockey East. They have swept Maine, then BC, then BU in consecutive weeks. So 6 straight wins coming into the weekend for them. And that's bounced them up in the NPI, up in the rankings, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. So, but for BU, the offense is definitely part of it, Eric. And part of that comes from the power play. BU's keys, number 1 at the top of the list. They need to get their power play going. When Jay Pandolfo was asked what went wrong against PC in that series, he said, our power play has been a real issue the whole year. And the numbers bear that out too, that they've been struggling. Only 1 power play goal in their last 10 games. And really, a lot of it hinges on Cole Eiserman. You don't want to put that much pressure on him, but he was such a great power play producer last year. 10 power play goals. That was the most in Hockey East. He's got 3 this year, and they all came in the first 2 games of the season. So he's gone 19 straight games without a power play goal. And you just feel like once he starts to get going there again, that could really help their power play out. But we need to see key contributions from him and Cole Hudson as well. He's got 1 goal and 2 assists in the 6 games since returning from World Juniors, where, remember, he got a little bit banged up. And he was previously on well over a point per game pace before that. He's on less than that now. So those 2 guys, if they come up big, help the offense for BU this week, that would be huge. And Hudson is BU's Hobie Baker nominee. That was announced this week, along with Higgins and Dean Letourneau for BC.
Yeah, both of these teams are kind of right on the NPI bubble right now. BC is in the field this week as we record this. BU's on the outside looking in. We'll talk more about the NPI later in the show, and I think there's a lot of reasons to think that hockey's position is actually better than most people think relative to where they are in the national picture. They would have 3 teams in the field if the season ended today, but these games still are really important, right? For BU, they got a game against NPI 14. That can really matter. For BC, they've been very good on the road this year, 7-2. They can do that again against a top 20 team. They really need to bank wins. That's important for them, and they'll get another opportunity at Beanpot on Monday.
Yeah, so BC going to play the early game in the Bean Pot against Harvard on Monday. And Harvard has moved its way up the NPI to 19th. So that's another kind of crucial bubble game that we're talking about. And we'll talk more NPI later. But BU starts their title defense in the second game of the Bean Pot semifinal round against Northeastern, a team that they've seen 3 times already. So they're pretty familiar with, and they beat them 2 of those 3 times.
Final note, we've talked about a couple of the midseason additions in this game. Oscar Hemming for Boston College, Tynan Lawrence for BU. Both of those guys were in Craig Button's most recent top 10 NHL draft rankings for 2026 of TSN. So I think that's notable as well. We'll see both of those guys on the ice against each other on Friday.
Yeah, and we have a lot of Hockey East games on NESN this week. Another one is Merrimack UNH Saturday, 7 p.m. Merrimack is 7-2 over its last 9 games, up to 8th in the Hockey East standings, and only 3 points out of 5th place because that middle section there is pretty condensed. And they'll take on UNH, which is a team that is trying to bounce back after being swept their last 2 weekends. Mike Souza, who we had on a few weeks ago, has talked about needing to find more offense, and recently they definitely need to. They've had just 4 goals in their last 4 games.
Tough task, though, because Max Lundgren has sneaky been one of the best players in Hockey East recently. He is on a 7-2 stretch right now. Merrimack is 7-2 over their last 9 games. As you said, he's got a .936 save percentage, just over a 2 goals against and 9 starts. Analytically, he's even better. If you look at some of the analytics, he's almost a top 10 goalie in the country this year. He's made 30 saves 14 times. He's been really good for Merrimack. So that task is not easy for New Hampshire. Merrimack, as we said, they're kind of right back in this conversation, 7-2 in their last 9 games. But the only team that beat them in that stretch, UMass, who swept them a couple of weekends ago. UMass is absolutely rolling right now, and we're going to talk with UMass head coach Greg Carvel on the other side of this break here on This Week in Hockey East. Welcome back to This Week in Hockey East. It's time to bring in our guest for the week, brought to you by Boston Harbor Hotel. Plan your getaway today at bostonharborhotel.com and experience Boston's best waterfront views. The head coach of the UMass Minutemen, Greg Carvel, nice enough to spend a minute with us. Coach, you guys have played so well recently, 5-game win streak. You've only allowed 4 goals over the last 7 games. Obviously, Michael Carvel is a big part of that. We'll get there in a second. But from a general sense, what has allowed you guys to play so well defensively here over this recent stretch?
Well, I think we had to get a little desperate and be a good defensive team because we haven't been that deep offensively. And we've currently have 3 of our top 9 forwards out. So when we came back from break, we really focused on being a good defensive team. We needed Michael Carvel to get back to his game. And I give our group a lot of credit. They've really committed to it, sacrificing small details they need to play good defense. The whole team's buying in right now.
Yeah, and your media availability this week, you talked a little bit about how this might be the best that you've seen your goalie Michael Carvel play. He gets the 2 shutouts. He gets named Hockey East Player of the Week. What's impressed you about him recently?
Oh, he's found new levels. And, this is Mike's 3rd year with the team. He's played a lot of hockey for us. We've been to 2 NCAA tournaments with Mike, and we needed him this year because we lost 5 forwards to NHL contracts from last year's team. So we needed him to be a big part of our team. He got injured in the first semester, was working back from it, and the Christmas rest was great for him. He came back at a whole new level of commitment and focus and intensity, which we needed, and we're really riding his back right now.
One of the things that stood out, and this goes in line with what you're talking about, is just the number of shots you guys have blocked recently. That 22 against BU certainly stands out, but it's 8 straight games with 10 plus blocks. Especially when you guys coming in, you were a little bit younger up front. You did bring back a decent amount defensively. What about that group defensively has kind of allowed you to, sacrifice and block all that shots and be something that can really help in terms of the defensive side?
Sure. Yeah, our top 4 defensemen came back from last year's team, which was going to be the backbone of the team. But the block shots are all the way around. And that's a really good sign for a group when you're having 10 plus 20 block shots a game. That means the kids are really bought in. They're sacrificing, playing hard for each other. But our back end is our backbone, and the guy that's really stepped forward for us is Lucas Olvestad. He's actually in a 3-game scoring streak, scored the game-winning goal at UVM on Saturday night in a 1-0 game. Playing huge minutes and playing. He's a senior. It's rare to get seniors on your team anymore. He's a captain and he's been outstanding. So as important as Michael Carvel been has been for us. Lucas Olvestad's right there too.
Another important guy on your team this year, Jack Musa, recently surpassed his 100th game played. He's been an important part of the offense for you guys as a junior. What are some of the main things that he brings to your team?
I think he's one of the best players in our league. He made the Spengler team and did a good job there. Again, third year player for us, recent Hobie Baker candidate for us, the only guy on our team that we nominated. He's outstanding. To me, he's the definition of fast twitch hockey. Competes as hard as anyone we have. Tremendous talent. He's hard to play against. He's fast. He's skilled, and he's got a big heart. He's really the heartbeat of our team.
Greg, Vasilov Nestrasil really came on and got off to such a nice start, especially as a freshman coming in, which obviously can be an adjustment. What have you seen from him as obviously a first-round pick, but adjusting to the level in college and how he's kind of gone through this first year and being a real impactful guy for you guys?
Sorry, my screen froze there for a little bit. You're talking about Vasilov. Yeah, he's a tremendous talent. And, when you get a high-talented player like that, you always wondered, like, how much commitment is he going to have to the team? How much entitlement is there in his game? And there's absolutely none. He plays his heart out. He's vocal. He's just as a freshman, he's a vocal leader. He's a physical leader. But with all the talent that he has, it's great to see. And he plays huge minutes for us. He's the first line, first power play. But this kid's he's a fierce competitor, and it's a real joy coaching him and watching his game grow this year.
You kind of mentioned the idea of that team identity, and obviously I'm sure you had some idea of it, knowing the amount of defensemen you had back. But in this day and age, when there are so many new faces into every team, how does that process maybe become a little bit different in terms of finding your identity? Whereas, you might have a ton of guys back in years past and you can kind of just hit the ground running. And now, even though maybe it doesn't track with how we do the NPI and every game mattering, but does it take time to evolve into your identity and be able to believe and live and play to that identity every single game?
Yeah. And that's what I keep finding here year from year is it takes my group time to grow into our identity. Because I think the greatest thing a coach could ask for now is not to have a bunch of first-round draft picks, but is to have a bunch of seniors and a team laden with juniors and seniors. But the way it is now, every year you're going to have 8, 10, 12 new players on your team, and it takes time to just acclimate them. And we had 11 new players this year, and the first half of the season was frustrating because we were extremely inconsistent. But now that we've had we're 2/3 of the way through the season, I can now feel like we've got 20 guys on the ice that are all playing to the same identity, playing that to the standard of play that we ask our players to play. So I think that's why you see in our group, winning games. We're scratching by. Again, we're missing 3 of our top 9 forwards, and winning with defense. But defense takes commitment and it takes teaching. And I tell our kids all the time, it's a huge jump from junior to Hockey East. It's not as big a jump to pro hockey. And so it just takes time. And, last year we came on hard in the second half, and we're hoping to do the same again this year.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about next was just a strong finish second half right around this time, start to go on a run last year and the year before. I know every team's different and you just kind of touched on it a little bit there, but what can you learn from those previous teams in the second half? Is that something that you can see being similar this year?
Yeah, it was, I believe it was mid to late January where we were a 500 team last year, and we had a real heart-to-heart discussion with our players, and they flipped a switch. And I really think it was desperation. They found desperation and urgency, and we tried to get to that point sooner this year. And coming back after Christmas, we really tried to get to that point, and I think we're there. Now it's just a matter of holding on to it, getting some bodies back, and of course, strong defense. I think it's given our group a lot of confidence. And Mike Carvel, when he's playing well, gives us tremendous confidence. And again, he was out with injury for over a month in the first half, and he lost his game, but he has worked hard. Extremely proud of him. He is. I can't imagine there's a better goalie in college hockey right now.
Well, we look forward to watching the stretch run. Coach, UMass will have Northeastern on Friday, and then we'll have them on NESN against UMass Lowell on Sunday. Thanks so much for a couple minutes, Coach.
Thanks for having me.
That's Greg Carvel, the head coach of the UMass Minutemen. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the women's side of college hockey. Bunch of sweeps last weekend. That's next on This Week in Hockey East. Welcome back, folks, to This Week in Hockey East. It was a rare weekend of sweeps last weekend on the women's side. That has been few and far between across Hockey East, but Northeastern, Holy Cross, and Vermont all getting sweeps. How about Vermont? They do it on the road against BU. It's a great weekend for the Catamounts and that line of Stella Retram, Lauren O'Hara, and Kaylee Lewis. They combined for 6 points. Retram in particular, 3 goals, 1 assist in our series. She's our Jersey Mike's sub above player of the week. UVM's in pretty good position here. We'll talk a little bit more about them next week. They'll be on NESN when they host Northeastern, but right in the middle of the pack, in good position to get a bye in the Hockey East playoffs. So they're in a good spot right now. Speaking of Northeastern, they are in as good a spot as you could possibly be right now, Bridgette, as they sweep UConn in a huge series last weekend.
Yeah, they've been on such a crazy run in terms of both how they've been doing in conference, but also they have had a great non-conference as well. So they've, with those wins over UConn last week with that sweep, got their 19th and 20th wins of the season. They've won 15 of their 16 conference games as well. And at the point as we enter the weekend, 12 points ahead of UConn in the Hockey East standings. So that's quite a bit of separation for them from first place to second place, big jump. And what was interesting too, with this being the top 2 teams in the conference, Northeastern decides to go and split their goaltenders, and they have Renna Trimbecki, the freshman. Friday, she makes 31 saves in her win. Then Lisa Janssen comes in, makes 45 saves in a 1-0 shutout win for her Saturday, her 4th shutout of the season. But that's the most saves she's made in her career at Northeastern. She's played 46 games for them. So that's just the highest number of shots she's faced, the most saves she's had as well. But I don't want to snub the goaltender on the other side. Just a great effort from Tia Chan in that series as well. She made maybe the save of the year when she jumped across her crease to stop a shot by Jaden Bogdan. Just Jaden throwing her stick across, as you see there, jumping backwards to try to grab that puck. And when you look at the overhead too, it's just an amazing stop by her. She's once again one of the top goalies in Hockey East. As you see, it just barely stays out. Great job by her, but unfortunately, even with that, Northeastern able to take both of those wins against UConn. UConn has 2 games against UNH this weekend as they try to bounce back and solidify that second spot.
Yeah, just ridiculous there. Northeastern gets Holy Cross, who now all of a sudden, after another sweep, is in 3rd entering the week. And is this maybe the biggest series in their program history with how good they've been as they take on Northeastern Thursday, Friday here? First of all, Holy Cross, as high as they've ever been in the NPI, they're 13th. They're like right there. And if you can pick off one of these games against Northeastern, who knows? They're like legitimately in the conversation. So that's massive. They took 2 games off Providence last weekend. They won their 10th Hockey East game for the first time in program history. They're rolling right now. They even have a chance to get to second place, Bridge. They're only 1 point behind UConn. So really cool to see Holy Cross right now.
Yeah, and another series we have here on NESN this weekend, Merrimack at BU, 4 p.m. Puck drop on Saturday at Walter Brown Arena. It's going to be a weird weekend for BU. They're rolling just 3 forward lines and 8 defensemen, and that's because BU is without Louisa and Lily Welke. They'll miss about a month going to the Olympics to play for the German national team. So without them, it's going to really put some maybe extra strain on that forward group for the Terriers. BU is hosting that game, but they're only 3-9 this year at Walter Brown Arena. They struggled at home last weekend. They dropped both of those games to UVM. And for Merrimack, they won 2 of their last 3 games. So we'll see what happens in that series. When we come back, we'll talk about the top teams on the men's side and what's at stake for the teams on the NPI bubble this week. We continue Around Hockey East, presented by Boston Children's Hospital, where the world comes for answers. Well, for the first time this year, Hockey East would have 3 teams in the tournament. If we were to hit the tournament entering this week, it would be Providence, Boston College, and UConn. And then we have some bubble teams to talk about as well. UMass, BU, and Maine, all still within striking distance. Eric, let's talk about some of the reasons why the outlook has improved.
Yeah, I think this is just really important to spend a minute on because, early in the season, this has been a topic of conversation a lot. Folks who follow college hockey know that your non-conference record really does matter as a league. And Hockey East was lagging a little bit, right? They were at like 543 in terms of their win percentage for a while. But the thing that's quietly happened here is since the start of the second half, since officially December 29th, Hockey East is 14-5-1 in non-conference games. That's the best record of any conference in that stretch. Maybe even more importantly than that, head-to-head against the ECAC over the last 10 games, they're 9-1. That starts to matter because it just allows everybody to kind of rise a little bit. We talk about so much that non-conference record being important. Well, everybody's kind of jumped up. And yes, is it precarious, two of those teams, right? BC and UConn, where they are in terms of the bubble? Of course, we know that. But this has been brewing for a little while. So teams moving up, it's not that they're in there by a thread, Bridgette, right? This has been they've been pushing up for a little bit. You look at some examples of why, right? UConn, gigantic win over Quinnipiac last week. Beanpot coming up. That's huge non-conference opportunities, especially for BC getting Harvard, because as you mentioned before, Harvard's right there. They've gotten themselves to 19. So that's a huge chance. Providence, who seems like, just in now, it's only like 3 weeks ago, they were 18th and on the outside. 6 wins later, they're 7th in the NPI coming into this week. But even some of the teams that didn't feel like they were in the picture, and let's go back to UMass, who we just talked about with Greg Carvel. UMass was 42nd in the NPI on January 12th. It's not that long ago. 4 wins later, that's it. 4 wins later, they're first. They've made a massive jump. So that is just huge for the entire league. So things are, looking up for where Hockey East is right now.
Yeah, and we'll just finish out with talking about UMass and Northeastern, that game on Sunday, another one of our Hockey East NESN games this week. And you look at what Michael Robel has been able to do. We talked a little bit about it with Coach Greg Carvel, but these are the numbers through 2026 so far. He has a 5-1 record, 977 save percentage, and a 0.67 goals against average. So anything under 1 is obviously incredible, and that's what he's been this season. And that's credit to 3 shutouts in his 6 starts in 2026. So we'll see if he can continue to roll in the new year when they have this matchup against Northeastern and then Lowell on Sunday. That game is on NESN at 3:30 p.m.
Yeah, I think that, it's not like the teams that UMass have beaten here was number 1 and number 2 in the country, and you still see them make the jump they make. And I think the good thing that we're seeing in the NPI, and again, remember, it's one of these things where technically the NPI isn't correct until the last day of the season, right? That's the only day that it's officially correct. But it just allows you to see sort of where we are, right? And the wins really matter. So even, Providence winning 6 games in a row, UMass winning 4 games in a row, even like a Merrimack jumping in back to the top 30, and the way the quality win bonus structure is, and we don't need to go into all that right now because it's complicated, but it's all available for a lot of these Hockey East teams. So to have 3 in, to have 3 in striking distance, to have a couple of more kind of in the top 30, that's really huge for the league. And I think you might still see some jumps. There's a long way to go. And this idea that it was a tough year for Hockey East early may not still be the case. But we'll see what happens this weekend, starting Friday night at Aganis with the Battle of ComAv for the 299th time, and then Beanpot on Monday. Should be great, folks. Thanks so much for joining us for this week of Hockey East.